let's get into our game of the week. And it is a fantastic one. We have gotten really blessed with two fantastic weeks to start off this college football season. And this week, we are sticking with another Big Ten versus SEC matchup. And that is as the Michigan Wolverines head to Norman to take on Oklahoma. The Wolverines are coming off a 34-17 win over New Mexico, while Oklahoma took down Illinois State 35-3 last week. Oklahoma, obviously the home team, they're a 6.5-point favorite. One thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual game, obviously one of the big narratives for Michigan is that they were finally handed the punishment for, a lot of the strategy stealing scandal, the Connor Stallions situation. Obviously not pretty old news, but this is the first time we've really been able to talk about it on the Football House. So just to recap for anybody that's not familiar, this is via Pete Thamel of ESPN. The punishment includes a 3-game suspension for Coach Sharon Moore, which, those are going to be kind of spread out. They're going to be served in weeks 3 and 4 this season against Central Michigan and at Nebraska. And then he's going to miss the first week of the 2026 season, which is when they play Western Michigan in Germany. There is an 8-year show cause penalty for Stallions, an additional 10-year show cause for former head coach Jim Harbaugh, and a fine that's projected to be around $30 million for the school. No wins vacated. No, real outstanding punishments. Obviously, Coach Moore has a little bit of flexibility in which 3 games he was actually suspended for. So my question for you, both of you guys, is do we feel like, was this punishment a little too light for Michigan? Was it a little too heavy for what was going on? Or do you feel like it kind of struck a fair balance for the violations that the Wolverines committed?
I think, if we're talking historically, people would probably say it's a little light. But now in the new era of college football with all the NIL and, all that money, $30 million is a lot. And I think that's kind of what the NCAA was trying to get at, trying to hurt them in their pockets, because that's where it's going to hurt them the most moving forward. But, still, I think at the end of the day, it's a slap on the wrist. I mean, their coach, Sharon Moore, misses 3 games, games that don't matter really. I don't think it's too much of a big thing. And then the whole thing with Stallions and Harbaugh, that only comes into effect if they try to come back, right? So, they're never going to be associated with the Michigan program again. That's really just a punishment for them. So I think Michigan makes out, and, look, at the end of the day, they still won the national championship. So I don't think they care.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't even have to, it doesn't even have to be like a Louisville thing, right? With the 2013 basketball national championship where it's like, they can't display the banner. It's like, yeah, the NCAA is still recognizing that championship. So,
right.
Job finished. Jake, any thoughts on that?
No, nothing. I would say a little light, but again, yes, Sharon Moore was in the program, right? Was he complicit in all this? Did he? That might be an inherently different question than if he coordinated it, right? Like, I do think the self-imposition that Michigan gave him went a long way in the committee, in their favor to the committee, right? They have some ground to stand on and say, hey, well, we took him off, right? We even if it was weeks 3 and 4 or whatever, right? So I don't know. I think they kind of dodged a good chunk of the actual punishment, if you will. I'm kind of with Cole and you guys on that, but at the same time, I also see it is kind of objectively stupid that Sharon Moore's got to serve the suspension for something that he wasn't the head coach for at the time, right? Was he benefiting from it? Yeah, he was, right? And that's the burden you accept when you leave that program. It's okay, I'm now accountable for its past successes or failures, all that stuff. I do think so I think both of those can be true.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be interesting though. Like, I'm not saying that anyone wants this to happen, but if this were to happen again with another program, like how they would respond, the NCAA, like, would they really put the hammer down on, another program, or because the precedent that this kind of sets is like, all right, so what, So it's like,
as long as you self-impose your coach, and they didn't benefit that much. It's like,
yeah, like I don't think it really sets a great precedent to prevent it, but I would wonder if it were to happen again, would they, go all out, and would the punishment be different?
I don't think you can. I really don't think you can after what we've seen. And is that a problem? I don't know. Like, this is just such a weird situation because when you determine that this was not really enough to vacate wins or do anything like that, because I feel like that's kind of the ultimate punishment, right? In college football or any college sports, it's like, all right, fine, like you got those off, but those wins don't count. And even when those wins don't count, I mean, even that fan base will always be like, well, no, we did actually win those games. So it's so hard to enforce. So I don't really see the NCAA laying out, a harsher punishment because the precedent's been set.
Yeah.
But do they codify this in the rules then, right? Do they make a Stallions rule, which I just looked because I wasn't aware that they had done anything, and they haven't changed any of the rules, right? Now that what they have done is set a precedence, I agree. But part of me thinks that all signs are pointing to they explicitly codify this in some sort of bylaw or constitution or whatever the hell the NCAA has, right? I think that would make sense so that they don't, because this is just like arbitrators and lawyers trying to determine if they actually broke rules, right? And there was just way too much. Like, Michigan has a lot to stand on because they're saying, hey, they're interpreting all this incorrectly, right? And this is too harsh a punishment because we avoided XYZ, and then it's just one lawyer pointing at another, right? So it's
like,
you have to think Charlie Baker and the crew act on this. Sorry, Cole, go ahead.
It's very comparable, I think, to like the whole scandals with the Patriots back in the day, right? Whether it's Spygate or Deflategate or whatever. It's like a lot of it is hearsay. You don't really know what happened. You don't get the details. Like, everyone that roots against Michigan's going to say Michigan's cheaters. That's the only reason they won. Is that true? I don't think so. I mean, I think Michigan was a talented team. We all know the Patriots would have won those Super Bowls regardless. So, that's what I'm getting at. But, there's a lot of similarities there.
If you ask the Sam Basil so as a lifelong Jets fan, if you ask the Sam Basil that was, existing at the time that the Deflategate stuff was going on, and you asked me to compare it to this, and you compared it to that, I'd probably be like, yeah, strip Michigan of everything. Tear the stadium down. But I do kind of
sound like you're from Ohio, buddy.
Yeah, I'd still feel strongly about some New England Patriots stuff. I think the NCAA, while it was light, I felt like they might have just maybe made the right move and just let's just move on. But let's move on from talking about this scandal, and let's talk about the actual game that Michigan is playing this week against Oklahoma. A very tough matchup, a continuing installment of the saga between the SEC and the Big Ten it's never going to end. And it never should, because these games are great. And two teams that are looking to kind of make a push for the playoffs this year. For me, my thoughts on this game, the first couple weeks of the season, especially this game, I mean, again, it comes down to experience. Obviously, Sharon Moore, great coach, but you got Bryce Underwood. He had 250 yards last week for a touchdown against New Mexico. But I think this Brent Venables defense is really going to hammer Michigan, and I think Oklahoma's going to get the win here and cover 5.5. Jake, what are your thoughts? How's this game going to go down?
Well, see, I don't know. I admit this, and the only reason there's two reasons I wanted to take Michigan. First, because I didn't want to curse you all after I don't want to bring you all down with me. So you're welcome in advance. No, I think it's just a bigger line than I would have expected. right? Yeah, I think there's some legit questions about both of these groups. Yeah, John Mateer had a really good game last week, and I am familiar with John Mateer's work because of the quarterback battle that he got into with former Bryant quarterback Zevi Eckhouse last year at Washington State, and he won that one. So, and Zevi Eckhouse lost another quarterback battle this year at the same school, by the way. So, R.I.P. Sorry, Zevi. Last 2 years of your career are on the bench. So whatever. But yeah, I think Mateer played really well last week, right? He's still got questions, right? I don't know how he's gonna play in a very hostile environment like this, and it's only gonna get worse in a very crowded SEC this year, obviously, as well. For me, it was about, did Bryce Underwood show us enough last week? And I think he did, right? I think he had a pretty good game. He was 21 for 31. He threw over 200 yards, right? It was and this is a situation that Michigan got off to a really hot start and they never looked back, right? And I don't expect the same to happen. They might not even win this game, right? But I do think this is going to be a little closer than the analytics are saying on this. Well, actually, the analytics back me up on this, right? They're saying it's going to be a one possession game, right? Michigan may even have a shot to win. I don't really know. And I do think Venables is going to bring the heat, right? Especially against quarterbacks. That's kind of his thing. So here's the thing. The redeeming quality for Michigan is their run game, right? So if they run the football really well, they run it like they've done the last 3-4 years, then this game is closer than maybe the average fan thinks it is. So that's why I'm feeling pretty good about the Michigan 5.5 here.
Yeah. Cole, I mean, look, I think that's going to be the story, right? Basically, Venables' defensive schemes versus Underwood's solid play. I mean, so if you had to pick in that matchup, who you got?
Yeah, I'm taking Oklahoma. I mean, I like that they're at home. They have the home field advantage. You guys covered pretty much all the talking points here, but I think when it comes down to it, you have John Mateer coming over from Washington State. If history tells us anything, when quarterbacks transfer to Oklahoma, a lot of them are pretty successful once they go there. You had Kyler Murray, you had Baker, you had Jalen Hurts. So if history tells us anything, I think that John Mateer is going to have a big year at Oklahoma for the Sooners. He threw for over 3,000 yards last year. He threw for just under 400 last week. He's just got a lot more experience than Bryce Underwood does. And, we talked a lot last week about Arch Manning and all the hype surrounding him. But I think just underneath Arch is Bryce Underwood, right? There's been a lot of hype for Bryce Underwood, going to Michigan. And yeah, he played pretty well last week, but, they played a no-name school, right? Now he's got to go to Norman, Oklahoma, face Oklahoma's defense. So, is he going to live up to that task? I don't know. We'll see. But not seeing enough game film on him yet, I'm taking Oklahoma. And I think Jake hit the nail on the head. I think the deciding factor, the X factor in this game is Michigan's run game, right? The last couple of years, they've had great guys in the backfield that have been able to just change the momentum of games and really allow Michigan to be dominant on the offensive side of the ball. And, they have a guy this year that, follows in line with that, and Justice Haynes. He ran for 159 yards last week, 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's a dude, right? So is Oklahoma's defense able to stop him? I think if they are, then they cover that spread. But I think if they let him get going and Bryce Underwood starts to, be able to manage the game, and you have the ground game there as well to help him out, then maybe it is closer. But from what I'm seeing right now heading into this game, I'm taking the Sooners.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing that we talked about last week with Ohio State versus Texas, very different for them because they were both top 5 teams heading into the season. But one thing about this new 12-team playoff is the fact that you can take a loss like this and kind of work your way back into the picture, and even let a loss like this kind of look better for your resume if you can keep it close and then finish out your season strong. So I got Michigan's schedule up here. I've got Oklahoma's schedule up here. After this game, Michigan's got Central Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin, USC. Obviously, Coach Moore's not going to be at those games for Central Michigan and Nebraska. And then Oklahoma has got Temple, Auburn, Kent State, Texas. If I can go a little later into Oklahoma's schedule too, they've got a gauntlet through the SEC. So it's Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, Missouri, LSU to finish out the season.
Wow.
I mean,
Jesus Christ.
I mean, that just adds for me with Oklahoma this week then, because this is a must-win game for them. If they have to go through that schedule in the SEC for the rest of the year, I mean, if they lose against Michigan at home and then have to go through that, that's tough.
And it feels.
And then
it
if they
feels
win, do they go to the top of the do they become the favorite? That's the crazy part in the SEC. It's like, do they give Texas a run for their money? It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, that game every year is usually a good game. I know there's a couple outliers there where there's been blowouts, but the Red River rivalry is always a good matchup. So, and if Texas plays the way they did last week, then maybe it is Oklahoma's year. We'll see, but
yeah. So looks like most of us are riding with Oklahoma here. Let's see. So I've got Oklahoma -5.5. Cole, you've got Oklahoma -5.5. Jake, you've got Michigan +5.5. And Tondo is riding Oklahoma -5.5. So big one for the Sooners. Could be huge for Michigan here. Very exciting matchup in week 2.